Welcome back. We are looking at the Algebra 1 EOC reporting category number 3, all questions from the 2018 version of the EOC. So let's get started. You might want to refer to my previous video for the 2017 version where I introduced some calculator tips and strategies, and I'll put a little link in the upper right corner. When you see that, you can click on it, maybe watch the first 5 minutes or so of that video, and that explains some calculator tips and strategies. So, number 1, at a restaurant, jars of tomato sauce are stored in boxes in the pantry. Each box contains 8 jars of tomato sauce. A cook uses 2 jars from one of the boxes. Which function shows the relationship between y, the total number of jars of tomato sauce remaining in the pantry, and x, the number of boxes in the pantry? So a lot of questions in this category are pretty difficult for students because they're word problems. So it's just going through and determining what information do I need, how can I figure out the problem, and what is it even asking me to do? So one of the first things I like to do in a word problem is mark it up. So I underline some things and then write your labels. What is y equal and what is x equal? Which function shows the relationship between y, the total number of jars of tomato sauce? So y is the number of jars of tomato sauce. What is x? X is the number of boxes in the pantry, okay? So we've got jars of tomato sauce and we've got boxes of jars of tomato sauce. Okay. So at a restaurant, jars of tomato sauce are stored in boxes. Each box contains 8 jars. Each box contains 8 jars. I'm going to write that down. Each box contains 8 jars. 2 jars have been used. Okay, I'm going to write that down too. That's important. 2 jars have been used. Okay, if they've been used, then we're going to subtract those from what I have. Okay, so which function shows the relationship? Go through your answer choices at this point. Go through your answer choices. And when I get to C, I'll get the right answer. Okay, there's 8 jars per box, right? So 8 times the number of boxes will give me the total amount that I have, the total amount of jars of tomato sauce. But then if I take away 2, I subtract 2, that'll show how many jars of tomato sauce are in the pantry, okay? So, and the y equals the number of jars. So y equals the number of jars will equal this. Okay, number 8. What value of n makes the equation, all of this, true? Okay, so what I would suggest doing, a little test-taking strategy, is storing in these numbers for x. So type in the number, store it in for x. That button is store. If you struggle with this, you can look at my calculator tips from reporting category number 1, 2017 version, or reporting category number 3, 2017 version. I discussed this as well. So we go through our answer choices. When I enter in this over here on my home screen, and actually, do you see how I stored in this number for x? It's a lot easier to type in an x on your calculator than it is an n, so you can just replace this variable with x. When I type in that, I'll get a number when I store in the correct answer. And then if I type in this on my home screen, replacing n with the variable x, I'll get that same number, okay? One of these will give me the same number on each side of the equal sign. That's my answer. All of the other wrong answers will not give you the same number on each side of the equal sign. And your answer in this case is G. When I store in -9 for x, that will give me the same number on each side. And if we want to solve this algebraically, what would we do? I'm not going to go through the entire problem of solving it algebraically, but I would distribute, combine like terms, move my variables to one side, and then solve. And I would get n equals -9. Okay, moving right along. Number 10. The value of y varies directly with x. Oh, direct variation, set up a proportion. Easy peasy, there's always one question and just set up a proportion and solve. What is the value of x when y is 105? Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to read this. If x is 3, then y is 21. What is the value of x when y is 105? Set up a proportion. When x is 3, y is 21. What is the value of x when y is 105? There's my proportion. Solve it the same way you probably remember from junior high. Cross multiply and divide. But you probably remember to set up your cross products. 3 times 105. Then you do 21x equals 315. And when you divide by 21, you get x equals 15. J is your answer. These are easy questions. These are the ones that I expect my students to get right. Every student I have. Get these right. There's always one question. Get it right. Number 13, what are the domain and range of f of x equals -37? Okay, anytime you see f of x, that's just fancy smancy for y. Anytime you see y equals, what can you do? Plug it into y equals on your calculator. So when you plug this into y equals -37, what do you get? You get a graph that looks like this, all the way down to -37, and it looks like this. And if you do zoom fit, it'll fit it on there. You can always look at your table of values if you're like, where's my equation? I can't, or where's my graph? I can't see it. So what's my domain in this case? Domain is your set of x values. What are the x values? All real numbers. Every single number. It goes all the way left to all the way right. That's C and D. It's not B, and it's not A. So my answer is either C or D. Okay, now we're looking for the range. Range are your set of y values. So what are the x values and the y values for y equals -37? Well, if you look at your table of values, what are all the y values? Every single one of them is -37. There's nothing else because every y value on this line is -37. Doesn't matter what x is, y is -37. So your answer is D. Number 15. 2 customers went to a post office to buy postcards and large envelopes. Each postcard cost the same amount, and each large envelope, I can't read, and each large envelope cost the same amount. The first customer paid $12 for 14 postcards, $5 for large envelopes. The second customer paid $24.80 for 10 postcards and the second customer paid $24.80 for 10 postcards and 15 large envelopes. Period. What was the cost in dollars of each large envelope? So what you really want to do whenever you're given a word problem, you got to do your labels. This is going to be a system of equations because I've kind of got a lot going on and I'm talking about 2 different things. So a lot of students don't know when to have a system of equations or just one equation. Well, if I'm talking about postcards and envelopes, I'm talking about 2 different things. That's a really good clue to let you know we're going to have a system of equations. So in this case, let's let x equal the number of postcards. And I'm sorry, not the number. We're going to let it equal the cost. And I do like to put a little $sign there to tell me, hey, this is the cost, or a number sign to tell me the number of postcards. In this case, it's the cost. Y equals envelopes. And I like to use X and Y because the strategy that I push at the end of the year for the EOC is to solve for Y and graph it. I know you learned solving by substitution, solving by elimination during the year, but again, this is just test taking strategies for the EOC. Okay, so now we actually have to set up our our equations. So 14 postcards, well, that's 14 times the cost for each postcard. 5 large envelopes, okay, plus 5y equals money spent. Okay, next equation, the second set of information that I have. 10 postcards, that would be 10x, 15 large envelopes, plus 15y equals $24.80. So what I want you to do now is pause the video and solve for y on each one of these problems. Solve for y here and solve for y here. And then you're going to graph it in y1 and y2. Go ahead and pause the video now. Okay, I hope that you have solved for y in both equations, graphed your equations in y1 and y2, and then now we're going to find the point of intersection. How do we do that? Second trace or second calc, go down to intersect, and then just enter, enter, enter. Okay, that's the point of intersection. It's asking for the cost in dollars for each large envelope. We did that as y. Y represented our envelopes. The y value at the point of intersection is $1.42. Number 24. The tables of ordered pairs represent some points on the graphs of lines Q and V. Which system of equations is represented by lines Q and V? Okay, so one thing you can do, you can always do a linear regression for each set of data, okay, for line Q and for line V. Since every single problem we're going to have to convert from standard form to slope-intercept form, then I would suggest just going through your answer choices. And I want to show you, when we get to G, I'm going to show you what happens when we get to the correct answer. So this is one of those where you just have to go through your answer choices, and it takes time, but you do what you got to do to get the answer right. So if I have 3x minus y equals negative 27, a lot of students really like to put a 1 in front of that variable if nothing is there. That's completely okay, and you don't have to do it. So if we solve for y, I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. Negative 3x minus 27. And now what do I need to do? I don't want what negative y equals, I want what y equals. So everything needs to be divided by negative 1. And when that happens, everything becomes opposite of what it was, because negative 3 divided by negative 1 is positive 3. Negative 27 divided by negative 1 is positive 27. There's one equation. The next equation, x plus 2y equals 16. If I'm going too fast, one of the good things about watching this video is you can always pause it or rewind it. So let's solve for y. Again, if nothing is there, can I put a 1 there? Sure. Minus 1x from both sides. Negative 1x plus 16. What do I do now? Everything gets divided by 2. I can always do it like this also. It's the same thing as putting a big line and a 2 underneath. So this becomes negative 1/2 x plus 8. So now I've got my two equations. What can I do? Well, I can plug in the first one, 3x plus 27. And which one is that? Okay, plug it into y equals, look at my table of values. Does it match anything? Absolutely. All of the points from line Q table are in there. That represents that line. What about the next one? Plug it into y equals. And what I would suggest is like actually deleting this first one, 3x plus 27, and then putting this one in and looking at your table of values. Sometimes, especially if you struggle with what you're looking at on your calculator, you know, if you have two equations and your table looks kind of funky, it'll show it'll have 3 columns basically. So you can look at your table of values and see that in this case, this represents line V. Moving along. Okay, I apologize for that little pause, but here we go. We're going to continue with problem number 30. What is the solution set for negative 4x plus 10 is greater than or equal to 5x plus 55? So I need to get my variables on one side of the inequality sign. I always move my variables to the left. It's just easier, especially if I have an inequality, because that's how it's going to be written in my answer. So now, what do? Subtract 10. Negative 9x is greater than or equal to 45. And at this point, this is the big thing with inequalities. When I divide by negative 9, because I'm dividing by a negative, what do I do to my sign? I flip it. X is less than or equal to negative 5. That is my answer, which is H. And again, if you plug in, if you really don't know how to solve this, which some students really struggle with stuff like this, if you can at least think of a number less than negative 5, like negative 6, store it in for X, type in this on your home screen, negative 4x plus 10, you'll get a number. Type in this on your home screen, not the question mark, you'll get another number. The number that you got on the left should be greater than or equal to the number that you got on your right. Okay, moving on, number 32. What are the equation and slope of the line shown on the grid? You need to know the slope of a vertical line is undefined. Undefined, no slope. So, which ones can you eliminate? Every single one of them. F, G, H. My answer is J. In fact, the equation of this line is x equals 6. Every x value on this vertical line is 6. Let's go to number 34. Now, because this is an equation and there's no, it's not a multiple choice problem, there's no trick here. You just have to know how to solve an equation. So let's do this. We've got 34x plus 95, and I'm going to go ahead and simplify this by distributing my 3 into every term on the inside of my parentheses. And when I do that, 3 times 14x is 42x, and 3 times 9 is 27. And now I'm just going to solve for x. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move this 34x to this side. And I get 8x plus 27 equals 95. And then I'm going to subtract 27 and move it over to this side. And I get 8x, and I'm going to rewrite it up here. So this right here, 95 minus 27 is 68. So I get 68 equals 8x. Okay, what do I need to do now? I need to divide by 8. 68 divided by 8 is 8.5. So on my grid, it's going to look like this. There's my positive, there's my negative. It's positive 8 decimal 5. So 8.5. Okay, number 37. Whew. This looks like it's going to be another system of equations word problem. So there are 15 plates in a kitchen cabinet. The diameter of each plate is either 7 inches or 12 inches. The diameter of all 15 plates combined is 140 inches. Which system of equations can be used to find the number of 7-inch plates? X. I'm going to write that down. 7-inch plates. And the number of 12-inch plates. Y. So obviously in a word problem, I need to just identify my variables and write my labels. Always, always, always. What are we talking about here? Okay, so let's come up with the first equation. How many plates are there in all? 15 plates. So the number of 7-inch plates plus the number of 12-inch plates should equal 15 total. Okay, so when you come up with one equation, eliminate your answer choices from there. What is it not? Well, it's not A. It says x plus y equals 140. I have this one, x plus y equals 15, and I have this one. This is another answer that I do not see this equation in. Okay, let's do our second equation. We have, let's see, how many 7-inch plates? So that's the diameter of one set of plates, right? So I have 7 inches times the number of 7-inch plates plus 12 inches times the number of 12-inch plates should equal 140 inches, the diameter of all 15 plates combined. So what's my answer? It's C. You have to be really, really careful in problems like this because look how similar this is. Okay, this just has the coefficients mixed up or the variables mixed up, however you want to look at it. So just be really careful about these types of problems. These systems of equations, word problems, can get you. Number 39. What is the equation in slope-intercept form of the line that passes through the points 2, -2 and is perpendicular to the line represented by y equals 2/5 x plus 2? Okay, a line that's perpendicular, you have to know this. The slope is the opposite reciprocal. So the slope of a line perpendicular to another line is going to have an opposite reciprocal slope, meaning instead of it being positive 2/5, it's going to be negative, flip it, 5/2. That's the number in front of the x. Which ones can I eliminate? A and B. Okay, let's move on. Test-taking strategy at this point. I've got 2 answer choices. Plug them into y equals and see which one contains this point. Which one is it? D. As a matter of fact, if you want to pause the video now, plug this equation into y1, second graph, look at your table of values, you'll see 2, -2. Number 43. The graph of a linear function is shown on the grid. Which equation is best represented by this graph? You must be able to solve for y, okay? You must be able to solve for y. So I'm just going to show, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, here's your answer choice, okay? And how do I make sure that this is my answer choice? Well, I've got y plus 7 equals, and I'm going to go ahead and distribute this -3 to get -3x plus 12. And then how do I solve for y? I subtract 7. So I get y equals -3x plus 5. And then a little test-taking strategy, plug it into y equals and see if it matches. But when you do, sometimes it's kind of hard to see on your calculator. So maybe look at your table of values and is 0, 5 a point on your graph? Is 3, -4 a point? Or I should say in your table. But obviously my y-intercept is 5 and my slope is -3. So 1, 2, 3 over 1, 1, 2, 3 over 1, 1, 2, 3 over 1. -3 over 1 is my slope. So A is in fact correct. If you solve for y and graphed it and it didn't look like this or those points were not on your graph, it wouldn't be the right answer. Cross it off, go to the next one and do the same process. Okay, number 47. The daily cost of hiring a plumber, Y, to work X hours on a repair project can be modeled using a linear function. The plumber charges a fixed cost of $80 plus an additional cost of $45 per hour. That looks like a rate. The plumber works a maximum of 8 hours per day. For one day of work, what is the range? What should you write above the word range? Y values. What are the y values of the function for this situation? Okay. Well, let's see what we're looking at. Again, we've got a word problem. We need to write our labels. What are X and what are Y? Okay. Daily cost of hiring a plumber, Y. So Y is going to be your daily cost in dollars to work X hours. So X is your number of hours. Okay, so fixed cost of $80, no matter what, $45 per hour. Students are usually pretty good at these types of problems. So $45 per hour, fixed cost of $80 equals Y. That's what my equation is going to be. Okay, what's the range? Well, I know I'm going to plug this into Y equals, and I'm going to look at my table of values. And I'm going to change colors here. X here, Y here. Well, if he worked 0 hours, he'd make $80. So if I plug this into Y equals and I look at my table of values, second graph, table, he could work 0 hours, because remember X is number of hours. He could work 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. Keep going. 6, 7, 8 hours maximum. Maximum. So if he works 0 hours, $80, okay? He charges a fixed cost. Plus, if he worked 8 hours, he would make $440. So that fixed cost of $80 plus $45 per hour. So the range in this situation would be anything between here, from 80 to 440. So again, range Y values. Anything we can eliminate? Sure. It's not going to be the X values, so I can eliminate A and C. Anywhere from 80 to 440. Y is in between that. Your answer is B. Number 52. What is the X value of the solution to this system of equations? So if it were during the year and I gave this problem on a test, I would say, hey, you already have a variable solved for. Use the substitution method. Anywhere you see X, you can replace it with 2y minus 4. On your EOC, just do the same thing. Solve for Y, graph, and find your point of intersection. So I would pause this video and do that right now. I'll give you the answer when you come back. So if you solve for Y, you graphed them on your calculator, and you found the point of intersection, second trace or second calc, go down to intersect, enter, enter, enter. What's the Y value? Or I'm sorry, what's the X value? You need to always go back and make sure, what is it asking me to find? The X value. The X value of the solution is -8. Number 3. Oh wait, this is the 2019 version. We're done with 2018, and that concludes your video for the Algebra 1 EOC reporting category number 3, 2018 version. I hope it was helpful.